I would always hear things that were very disheartening, like saying, how do you expect this story to work in the marketplace?
Between the time you articulated the desire 20 and the time you made your first film when you were 39, what kept you going?
I articulated my desire to be a filmmaker much earlier than when I was 20. I knew I wanted to make films since I was 6 years old. But the fact is that I actually made a film when I was 12. And then, of course, it was stuck in my mind that that's what I was going to do for my, as my vocation, Whether it was going to be a profession or not, I didn't know. I wanted to make my first film. I said, let me be the youngest, because for me, the youngest filmmaker at that time was my cousin Gurudat, because he'd made his first film when he was 25. This is one of those adolescent notions that you always have when you're young. And of course,
and then you confront reality.
Then you confront realities of many kinds. It's very complex reality. But I was writing my script, or rewriting the script of the film that became my first film.
Ankur.
Yes, it was a short story that emerged out of something that I saw. And suddenly, a lot of things fell into place because of that one incident. It suddenly became, in a microcosm, what feudalism was all about, what change was all about. So many things like this. Suddenly it's you see the world in an event, in an instant. What happened, and that's why I said this is the film I would like to make. Of course, but that incident, it means that you have to create characters. You have to give them, you have to breathe life into them, as it were, and allow them to function. In other words, they have to grow organically through the story. When you get a large number of awards and things for a film, and the film also does well in the marketplace, you really are on top of the world. But I don't think I have the personality to suffer from any kind of hubris, So there's no, I don't feel invincible, because of momentary success or even consistent success. I don't believe that I will start to feel that nothing will go wrong. I'm one of those people who feels that everything can go wrong, at any time. So you have to just soldier on, that's the way I look at the world.
How do you manage to remain so rooted?
How do you remain rooted? It's a good question. I don't know how to answer that question. But the most important thing is, once you've done something, it's behind you. It is not something on which, that's not the boat on which you ride. So you have to give that up. The moment you made a film, you cut the umbilical cord, you get on with something else.
Is it also because it has been, while you have always found funding for your films, it's not always and regularly been easy to do so?
Oh yes, absolutely. Absolutely. That was one of the major reasons, I should imagine. Once you made certain kinds of choices, it's not easy, because it's easy if you go with the main flow. It's easy when you go with the main flow, then you don't have to worry about it. But then, I don't have the sensibility to go with the main flow, because I would always question that,
In fact, you said you would like to have made a film by 25. One of the reasons was because your cousin Guru that did that, but you didn't make his kind of films at all.
Not at all. The important thing is that you always have an impossible dream. Which you want to make possible. Otherwise, what's the point of that dream?
Satyajit Ray is a filmmaker you have held in great esteem,
Yes.
who you've documented for us.
Yes.
Tell us why he inspired you so much.
This uncle of mine who lived in Calcutta, he said, have you seen, because I know you're interested in cinema, have you seen this young man's film called
Portrayal
Panchali? So I said, no. He said, why don't you go and take a look at it? I went and I was absolutely floored by this incredible film. And during that one trip I was in Calcutta, I saw it a dozen times. Because it was like an explosion that had taken place in my mind. I said, this man is doing something that is so different from everything that I have ever seen. So when I saw Satyajit Ray's film, I said, my, here is this man.
This is what I want to make.
This is not what I want to make. I can make my own way. That's what I learned from him, because he made his own way.
Benegal's next release will be a comic satire about a letter writer whose unique vocation gives him power over the people whose letters he reads and writes. The film shifts Benegal's gaze back to a setting that has always interested him, the village.
It was fairly accidental that my first 3 films happened to be rural. So everybody thought that I was making films only about rural India, which is not true, because I moved, I did all kinds of films. I did urban films, I did contemporary urban films, I did historical films, background, all sorts of things.
And yet with your next film, you're going right back there.
Because I do believe that we should look at it. These things should not get off our sight lines. And when we are talking about tradition and modernity and movement from tradition to modernity and how to reconcile our traditions, that which we do not wish to lose, with the kind of modernity which we are going ahead with, all these questions that constantly people worry about, and our cinemas, our Saas Bahu serials, for instance, soap operas, always, lauding tradition, but there's nobody really traditional out there, somehow we have relegated to the village to a penumbral darkness.
In your new film, it's a sort of comic satire. So you're not looking at the kind of conflicts, the kind
I am. I'm looking at everything.
With a different brush.
With a different brush. 30 years ago, 35 years ago, when I was making films, people would be willing to look at something, audiences, young audiences at that time, to look at something serious and take it home with them. Now do you reject anything like that? Suddenly you say, oh, I don't want to see anything that is grim. I don't want to see anything that's going to give me a bad night. Then you have to find strategies to bring that back into your consciousness. But you will have to use different strategies.
Right.
You can't use the same strategies that you may have used 35 years ago or 30 years ago. Because today, if you're going to use that, there's a blank wall.
And yet Shyam Benegal is certain that cinema is not just a fun thing, not just time pass. His movies reflect his deep intellectual engagement with the world and his eclectic upbringing. He remembers a childhood where his father, a still photographer, would make home films with a Bolex camera, and passionate dinner table discussions with siblings and visiting relatives.
There were cousins and folks who would come, and different political viewpoints. This was also very important because I had my oldest brother sitting in Calcutta who was being vastly influenced by left politics, and then I had a brother in my own home, older brother.
RSS leanings.
Leanings. So our dinner table used to be one of great scintillating and often fairly acrimonious arguments. So you never felt that you were living in a little pond, The outside world was always part of where you were. Although we lived in a very small place, in a little cantonment town. So, but the world was never far.
Okay, what made you treat women like normal human beings? Let's put it like that.
Because they're normal human beings. It's like
no, but it's so easy for you to have grown up believing something else.
Well, it would have, yes, maybe. But then also I should imagine it must have been my own background that made it so. I had 6 sisters, 3 brothers, and they were all individual.
And I believe your father actually discriminated against the boys when it came to investing in education.
Exactly. So, all those things, that didn't matter. And then, independence of women is a very important aspect, according to me. Another thing is that patriarchal societies always see women as victims. And the moment you see a woman as a victim, you already weakened her.
Talking about women, these two wonderful actors who you gave or introduced us to, Shabana Azmi and Smita Patil, anything that brings to us why they are such brilliant craftspeople, why they are such wonderful actors?
Well, many things. Because they're the kind of people they are. Also their backgrounds, don't forget. The kind of experiences they brought to bear.
Similar to yours in that sense.
To some extent maybe, but much more. I mean, take Shabana for instance. Her parents were communists. She lived in a commune as she was growing up. There are so many, the kind of experiences she had, even as a child, very few children would have. She can bring, she can internalize so many different things which can emerge in a performance. Smita did the same. Although she was not a trained actress, she did the same. She came from a politically active family. So their concerns went beyond themselves.
Girish Karnad has said that this famous rivalry that the whole world, even today, keeps alluding to is rivalry that stems from the fact that both of them wanted to, were a rival for your affections, for your respect, or being number one with you. Do you agree with that?
Oh no, I think Girish tends to exaggerate these things. I don't really believe that. Although, of course, Girish himself, I think his contribution to my work has been very, very great. I have a great admiration for him.
But you don't agree with this statement
No,
of
no,
his?
I don't agree with that. It's easy to intimidate an audience because you are in a position which you can. What's the point of that? You'll drive them away. Not invite them into your world. Invite them with every strategic device you can put together.
What do you do when they reject you?
Well, you try again. It's a very simple thing.
Do you see it as your failure as a craftsperson,
Of course,
or
yes.
do you see it as
No,
their
I don't
inability
see-
to meet you half?
I have never thought that the audience was incapable of understanding anything. That's not true.
At 73, Shyam Benegal has won every accolade the country has to offer. He was nominated to the Rajya Sabha in 2006 and is in a hurry to make his next film. One which will have his trademark style. Characters, no matter how villainous, always justified by their context. This filmmaker wants his audience to find their own morality.
Are you ambivalent then?
I'm not ambivalent, but I do want people to realize, you know that when somebody does something wrong or falls foul of accepted social norms,
The brothers in Nishan,
they are the kind of people, they enjoy a power that is only because it has been sanctified by tradition. But they are villains, there's no question. Villains in terms of social norms. But I'm not painting them tarring them myself, there is a human aspect to everybody.
what stops you from playing
God.
God?
Because I'm not God.
But
It's
most
as simple.
filmmakers for that
Most
that
filmmakers
time
do. But
do
you
believe
have
that
it.
they
You
are.
have a position. You are in that position to play God. But the fact is that life, I think, is you cannot be so judgmental about everybody and everything. Sometimes justice and law are not always on the same side. So and you will not be able to look at all that if you were to be totally judgmental.
But I want to know, out of this body of work that you have so far for us, which films do you think are the most emotional in their appeal?
For audiences, I know that Ankur continues to have that kind of a charge.
No, I'm saying for Shyam Benegal
I see the flaws
in your films.
in my films too easily. But I can tell you, there are some films that I can see. Some films I can't see in their entirety. That's what I mean. Like I can see a film like, say, Bhumika. I can see a film like Mandi. you know, and enjoy it. I can even see films like Mammo and so on and so forth. But there are some films that I can't sit there and see. I won't name them. You know, I made too many mistakes in this one. Yeah.
From what we've read, heard, you say, seen your films, there is this strong intellectual base to everything that you're doing. What is the emotion that gets you personally?
The most important emotional thing that for me is important is the compassion. Because there is nothing, there is no binding force that is greater than compassion. You know? And if I can get the right kind of situation where the audience can be involved in something in a compassionate way, that I see that as an achievement.
Shyam Benegal, thank you very much. We
Thank
look
you.
forward to your next film in August
Yes.
and whatever you're moving on to after that.
Thank you.
Thank you.